All right, at this time, we'll call our meeting to order and welcome all of you as board members. I'm glad to see each of you, and you is doing well. I hope Zoom. Can you all hear? Okay. And welcome to those who join us from the public tonight. Thank you for coming. This is the regular meeting of the Georgetown Township Board of Trustees. We meet twice a month, second and fourth Mondays of each month. So this is our meeting for February here. And there's an agenda, just so the public knows, there's always an agenda that is available online. It goes online a week ahead of the meeting. So you're always welcome to, obviously print that and bring it with you, or pull it up on your phone while you're here, because you'll hear me describe tonight, those of you maybe who have not been to a meeting before, that there are two public comment periods, the first of which has to do only with agenda items, okay? And you might say, well, what are the agenda items? That's why I'm pointing you to the agenda and getting you accustomed to the fact that, you know what, just for your benefit, those of you who are here tonight, one of the things we're trying to implement, and we knew it would be a challenge, and we'll work out the kinks, and this may be our roughest meeting in that respect, but we are trying to implement both an in-person format, such as we have here tonight, and at the same time to allow people to both observe and participate via Zoom. And so right now we're working out some of the logistics of how that Zoom works. I think all of us probably become pretty accustomed to that program, and know that sometimes you can get reverb and all manner of things. So I used Zoom here recently, and I was able to pull up like 9 people in my family. My mom was so interested as an 82-year-old. She started taking pictures of my phone. That mom, that's taken a little too far with the picture taking, but it is fascinating technology, and we're going to do our best with it here tonight. And Becky, we thank you, because I think you're heading up some of that, so thank you.
Well, I feel bad because I missed a step. I thought I was on it, and I missed a step.
Sure.
Thanks.
So again, that first public comment period we'll come to shortly is for agenda items, and then later in the meeting, anything that you among the public wish to bring up, you'll have an opportunity to do so. You're allowed 3 minutes. You can speak at the first one and the second one if you like. All right, but understand this too. Overall, this is a meeting of the board. So in that sense, I'm speaking to my fellow board members primarily, and you're more or less observing that board meeting because it ought to be so, and the law also requires it to be so. And so we invite your presence and your observation, and at the right times your participation. But understand, of course, that this is when we do the township business. So, all right. To begin the meeting, then, we're going to open in prayer, and I'm going to look to Mr. Schwam.
Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Could we bow our heads, please? Our dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much that we're able to gather here and to go about the business of Georgetown Township, and we pray for your wisdom, Lord, and your direction. Please be with us. We also pray, Lord, for our nation. We pray for our national leaders, our Senate, our state. Please may they serve well and be under your guidance and blessing. We thank you, Lord, for Georgetown Township and the wonderful people that work here and how diligent they've been in incredibly cold weather. We thank for those first responders that get out there so much for us and serve us. We're blessed with our fire department that just received the highest rating they've ever received when they were evaluated. And these individuals trying to keep us safe, protect us, and keep our community safe. Please guide us tonight, Lord, and may we be open. We ask for your sharing, wisdom. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you please stand and join us in the saying of our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, you may be seated. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll this evening?
Everyone is present.
All right. All are present. Item 6, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Any board member wish to address any item on the agenda in terms of adding something or moving something? No? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, our agenda is approved. At this time, in our continuing, I guess you call educational series, we're going to have tonight a presentation, a water sewer update. We've been trying, again, for the benefit of the public, we've been trying as a board to address our major departments one meeting at a time here, just to bring us all up to speed, maybe teach us some things we didn't know, remind us of some things that we've forgotten, and then talk about some things that are going on that may be new to all of us and to the community. So at this time, I'd like to ask Joel Hamburg to step forward here to the mic. And Joel's been with the township for a long, long time. We appreciate him very much. Just became a grandfather recently, so congratulations to you. That's wonderful. But if you would, just update the board on this important area. I used to say when I served on the Water Sewer Committee, it may be the committee that deals with waste, but it's the committee probably through whom a greater proportion of our budget flows than almost any other budget items. So they do a lot, and it's important to us all. We'd certainly notice if they didn't. So Joel, would you take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Bear with me if I'm a little nervous.
It's all right.
No, I'm not a public speaker, so.
It's all right. Appreciate it.
Like you said, pretend no one's around here, but it's kind of hard when I open my eyes and see you. So.
Right.
So I'm Joel Hamburg, Director of Public Works, overseeing the Water and Sewer Department. We have full-time guys that work for me in my department, and these men are very knowledgeable in their field, and they are all cross-trained to help each other out. The list of responsibilities is quite extensive, but their main duties is, it was Mike Marks, he oversees lift stations and repairs. Brad Knoper oversees water and sewer hookups and new meters. And Alan Feenstra oversees MISTIG and sampling. And Seth Zimmer oversees plat construction and GIS. I can't tell you enough how blessed I am to have those guys working with me. Together we maintain over $50 million in assets for the township. Here we have a map of Georgetown's water system. We have over 267 miles of water main in the ground, with the first pipe being installed in around 1964. Georgetown receives its water from the city of Wyoming, out by the Wyoming Water Treatment Plant out near Lake Michigan. Wyoming pumps this water through two transmission mains from Lake Michigan to the east, where communities like Georgetown has connection points. Georgetown has 3 of these connection points, and they are one right about there, the other one right there, and right about there. The water flows through these connection points through valves and pumps and fills our ground storage tanks up on Baldwin Street Hill there by 36th Street. The water then goes from these tanks to various piping and valves and eventually to people's houses. And people's residents' water pressure is based upon elevation to these tanks. The bigger area shaded in green is one of our high pressure districts, and that area right there is supplied by water through our 2 elevated tanks. And then this area right here is on a pump station, valve station, metering station right that corner there, and that is fed off the Wyoming Gazan main.
Is that Barry and Kennewill right there?
Barry and Kennewill, right by your house there, yep.
Yeah.
And then we got one other little shaded area right there that has a little booster pump station. We have 4 ground storage tanks. The one on the left is a 5 million ground storage tank that was built in 2004 on Bauer Road. And then we have 3 tanks on Baldwin Street, a $500,000 built in 1965, $1 million built in 1971, and the $5 million behind it there, that was built in 1986. And we also have those 2 elevated tanks I mentioned earlier. We have a $500,000 on Bauer Road that was built in 1995, and the one on 36th Street, it's a 1 million gallon tank, and that was built in 2011.
So on that one, I remember that's the most recent one, that one you just mentioned.
Yes.
Can you remind me, because I know I was on the board at that time, it's been a lot of years, approximately what does a tank like that cost, an elevated tank?
I think that was roughly about $900,000
Okay.
back then. Here's some slides with our pump stations that were off that Wyoming transmission main. This is referred to as GT1 at 8th Avenue in Barry. Inside there, you can barely see with this slide, but there's 2 pumps up there. There are 150 horsepower electric motors up here, and the pumps below it. This station alone can put out about 8,000 gallons per minute. The valve station here is at 40th and New Holland. And this valve station here is at New Holland and Chicago Drive. This has piping inside the building for future pumps. With those 3 I just showed you, I'll go back. With those 3 I just showed you, they can put in roughly about 14,000 gallons per minute into the township. In this past year, we had a high day of about 17 million gallons used in a single day. And we purchased more than 2 billion gallons of water from the city of Wyoming this past year.
Did you say billion or million?
Billion. This is the metering station that's near Jim's house there at Kennel and Berry. And this is the little booster pump station off of Walton Heath by Port Sheldon. This slide is the booster station on Baldwin Street by our ground storage tanks. This pumps water out of the ground storage tank and fills our LFA tanks. This was built in 2014, has 2 100 horsepower pumps in there, and it puts out about 4,000 gallons per minute. It does have piping for future pump also at this location. SCADA system. The picture on the left is how we used to be able to see from the office how much water was in our ground storage tank. You can't really make out the number on there. It actually says about 47 feet in there. Now today, in the last 2 years, the board graciously approved a newer SCADA system where we can see all our pump stations, valve stations, our ground storage tanks, our elevate tanks, and it is a blessing because before, the only way we'd do it is if we'd run out to the actual site itself to look. Here's a map of our sewer system. We have roughly about 170 miles of sewer main. The sewer comes from people's houses, of course, and flows in our sewer main and runs through various piping and manholes downhill by gravity to low points in our collection system. And then in turn, it goes into a lift station, a sewer lift station. It gets pumped to a higher elevation and it keeps on heading towards a sewer treatment plant. Sometimes this can happen several times before I can actually get to the treatment plant. The journey of the sewer, especially from the west side, could take up to 24 hours. By the time it comes from around 40th and Baldwin, by the time it reaches all the way over here to the Granville treatment plant. We have 19 of these sewer lift stations in our system. They're expensive to build and expensive to maintain. This is a lift station that is on Port Sheldon Street. People drive right on by it all the time. They don't even realize they're there in their neighborhood. This one is, like I said, on Port Sheldon. It's between 40th and 48th. Picture on the right is of the 3 pumps that are inside that lift station. This next one is on Bar Road, just west of 24th. All the controls are in this station, are in that electrical box. And this is a picture of the wet well. Of course, you can see the sewer flowing in it. And there's pumps down underneath the sewer. And there you can see a pile of grease that's starting to build up inside there. If you look close enough, and this picture doesn't do it justice, there's actually a little plastic hammer, toy hammer floating around in there. Projects. This past year, we had a dozen projects that we oversaw going in our township. We had over 11,000 linear feet of sewer main. Here's a picture of a manhole being set, some deep sewer being dug in. And we added over 14,000 linear feet of water main. Here's some more pictures of construction. Sampling. Water sample is important. We want to make sure we have quality water in the township. We took over 536 water samples in 2020, along with construction sampling. The sampling happens weekly. Dig. It's a busy year. Even during a pandemic time of year, we had over 9,000 dig requests last year. Meters, we added 171 new residential meters. This is a typical residential meter setting in a house. We also had 171 new water and sewer hookups. And the picture here is showing a typical water and sewer for a residential house. Every year we televise sewer. We contract that out. We televise about 100,000 feet of sewer. We're looking for inflows and infiltration, defects, roots, grease buildup, blockages, deteriorating pipe, and other points of concern. As our system is aging, we are seeing more problems with some manholes that need to be rehabilitated. Picture this past year where we have getting a manhole that's starting to deteriorate lined. And every year we flush roughly around 400 hydrants and we repair as needed. We also try to exercise around roughly 400 valves per year. And while we're doing this, we are working on trying to mark these assets. Last year you approved the purchase of 2 GIS Trimble units. And so we can have a more accurate information of our location, what the asset is, the condition, last operated, and other points. While we have these, we also are marking any problems we have, like water main breaks, and putting that stuff into our GIS system. Here's a picture of a valve that was leaking. We're digging it up on the left, and actually you can see that valve, water spraying right out of the top of that valve. Here's a water main break. This happened just December. Right back behind the office here in Hollyhock. Try and locate, get down to that water main. And on the picture on the left is a repair clamp going on in water main, and on the picture on the right is a new valve being put in place. We had a valve that was bad. This is a current project we're currently working on. It's taken quite a few guys' man hours to do this. This is at our GT1 pump station. That's that 150 horsepower electric motor on top. There's the pump body and the piping. There's a close-up of it, and there's the impeller that's pushing that water along. Just to give you the scope of this, we're taking this out because the bearings are bad on this impeller shaft. Just to give you some scope of it, the cover of this pump weighs roughly 500 pounds. Here we are working in our shop on some of the sewer lift station motors. Picture on the right, he's getting ready to put a new ceramic seal on that pump, and the picture on the picture on the left. Picture on the right, we're putting new seals in that one. On this one, we are taking this one apart. We need these new bearings. We got a couple guys working on that, and then we are trying to press new bearings on that shaft that we took out. Trying to catch up to see where I'm at here. The throne. People flush things that shouldn't belong shouldn't go down the toilet. Kids' toys, just like that plastic hammer I told you about. Pool cue balls, Hot Wheels, baby wipes, flushable wipes, paper towels, dust cloths, underwear, t-shirts. Pretty much seen a lot of things. People flush it and it goes away. Well, someone has to take care of it, and it's usually myself or my guys or people at the treatment plant. This past year, there was toilet paper shortages. People were buying these flushable wipes. which really don't break down like toilet paper, and of course it hangs up in our sewer system, causing backups and clogging our pumps. Here we have Brad, as you can see here. He's got a 6-foot or 5-foot rags intertwined with hair and you name it, all together. That was clogged up in that pump there. Becky, come on, you got it.
I pointed the camera at you because I thought when this is my face, I completely can't handle that.
It's like with your shower by 100
Times 100.
Here we are, we're pulling more pumps. You can see all the buildup on the pump and inside the pump. Here we are again. This one's even so covered you can hardly make out the pump. When that first happened, when people were starting to go crazy over toilet paper, we were pulling a pump every day for 3 weeks straight.
Has it
Of course,
improved since then?
what's that?
Has it improved since then?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, the only way to get rid of this stuff is we use our hands. Hands and knives and scissors. There's no nice way to do it. Biofilter. This past year we added the biofilter along Chicago Drive, kind of right behind Ruckelite on the township property. The startup was in mid-November, and after some fine-tuning, the biofilter microorganisms is really starting to grow, and we are starting to see the latest results from the county odor logger is almost near zero hydrogen sulfide levels, which is a great sign. Every week the air quality and the smell seems to be getting better, and hopefully by the spring we'll have it fully developed, and what odor left is hopefully very unnoticeable. So it's a good sign. And of course, no job is done without doing some paperwork. Questions?
Are them water pumps, they have generators on them or not?
Yes, we have generator, 350 kilowatt generator at our pump station at Berry and 8th. And then also we have a generator at our pump station up on Baldwin Street Hill.
So you can maintain pressure most of the time if we lose power?
Yes.
Well, we're told we have good pressure in the township. I think it's been my personal experience. Do you know, comparatively to other township cities around us, do we have, generally speaking, good water pressure throughout the township?
Yes, we do.
You don't get a lot of complaints related to that?
No, more so we get complaints when the heat of the season, because that's when we use the most water and the most draw. Mm-hmm. Our tanks are still up there, but the draw is so great, so it kind of lowers the pressure a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How many lift pumps did you say we had?
19.
What do you see, Joel, as a large need that we should be looking at on the horizon? We go, hey, I know in the next 5 years, given the age of this or that, we're probably going to be looking at a placement.
Well, the state, I'm required to have a 5-year plan and up to a 20-year plan. And in that 5-year plan, we will need to build a transmission main down 48th. We have a 24-inch main and it goes to 12. We will have to extend that within 5 years on 48 from about Berry Street to our tanks.
Because of the growth out there.
Because of the need for the water.
Mm-hmm.
The township, you see us, we used over 20 billion gallons of water. I'm sorry, 2 billion gallons of water last year, which is a record. So we keep on using more and more.
Just estimate-wise, a project like you described in the 48th could cost anywhere between X million and Y?
I got a rough estimate of about 12 to 15 million.
Have you done any engineering as far as lift pump need as we go up Fillmore towards the college? I know it runs downhill a little bit there, but I'm just curious if they've done engineering on that.
No, that's going to be all development driven. So, and just west of 28th there. That sewer.
If the sewer comes up from Loing Woods, that'll probably come across the 36 eventually, but
It's supposed to go through their plat out to Bar Road.
Okay.
Joel, excellent presentation, and you love your job. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, question, as far as something that you might like us to let the public know, so we get asked a lot of questions or we have a lot of interaction with the public. Is there something that you want to say, look, let people know, remind them, reinforce this notion? For example, like our assessor's office, hey, tell people that large summer tax bill we collected, but we don't get any of it. Tell people, is there something in your area where you'd say, hey, tell people to stop doing X or start doing Y? What might you say?
Well, be mindful of your flush, Kids, they're going to play by a toilet. They're going to try to flush something down. But, dishcloth, paper towel, it doesn't belong in a toilet, neither do flushable wipes. They just don't break down. It just causes headaches. And it causes that neighbor's headaches because eventually if it doesn't get clogged up if it gets clogged up in a sewer main, if it does, somebody, your neighbor down the street might have a backup in their house because of it. And no one wants to deal with sewer in their basement. And of course they're mad at us, but yeah, we have no control over it.
Backflow preventers, are they more and more prevalent?
Yeah, they started putting them in 99, 2000, something like that.
Yeah.
Start to see more of those.
Anyone else for Joel? Okay.
You did good, Joel.
Yeah. Joel, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. That was item number 7 on our agenda tonight. Item number 8, communication letters and reports received for information. For the public, there's always a link to a PDF that you can look at for yourself on those items.
I have a question on one of those.
Sure.
I think it came out of a concern or question that I had with regard to the de minimis and clothing allowance policies. I don't remember the exact nature of the conversation we had here, but I think there was basically a recommendation at the end of it that it would be an item discussed by the finance committee.
Mm-hmm.
And the note here, I want to say February 1st, item number 9 on the minutes for that meeting just say that it was discussed and the committee didn't recommend any changes at this time. It just seemed very sparse. So 3 of you that were on the committee, it looks like all 3 of you were there at that meeting. I was just wondering if you could fill in a little bit about anything.
Sure. Michael, I know did you bring it up originally or was that Catherine? I can't recall.
Catherine.
Okay. All right. Well, we covered that 2 meetings ago, Dan. You're trying to get my attention? Or? Sure. Okay. Yeah, it's a good point of discussion and a fair follow-up, Catherine, so we'll make sure. Can we bump that to that last item? Yeah?
Sure.
Okay. Let me make note so I don't forget that then. Okay. All right. Item 9 on the agenda this evening. This is our first public comment period I alluded to before, where if anyone here tonight would like to step forward and speak to the board on any item that remains on our agenda this evening, you're welcome to do so. We just simply ask that you identify your name and your street, and you'll have 3 minutes. Anyone wish to address the board this time? All right. Seeing none, we will move to item 10, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda this evening?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion among the board. All right. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Item 11. This is the Fairway Estates. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is. This Fairway Estates Glen Eagle PUD. A request to change from PUD to low-density residential for, I believe it was 6 identified parcels that are located off from Parsons Street in that area. Is there someone who wishes to, and this is, by the way, simply to, at this point, to adopt the staff report as a finding of fact and approve the resolution as recommended by the Planning Commission. Anyone wish to place that before the board by way of motion?
So move.
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion among the board on that. Just to make it clear again for the public who's looking on, we've got several lots in a very large plat of condominiums that's gone on for years and years. It's a PUD, of land unit development, and they're looking to remove several of those lots from the PUD because they weren't able to run sewer there. They're looking to more or less restore them to low density residential, LDR we call it, which is befitting of that area if you ever drive down Parsons. So, anyone, any thoughts, concerns, comments?
I do. And I feel like I should know this, but the Bullhouse who's on this committee, she's an attorney, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was thinking that was the same. So the reason why I asked that is because I could see, as an attorney, I could see some of the legal gears rolling in her mind as I'm reading the minutes from that Planning Commission meeting. Looks like February 3rd. And one of the questions she was asking about was with regard to the plat entry sign. There weren't any plans for that right now, but then it looked like there was actually some back and forth discussion about that. And her concern about that was, it jumps around a little bit. Basically, there was going to be some, potential issues with that. She also was pointing out, I should have these highlighted because the conversation kind of goes back and forth a little bit. She pointed out some issues with the backyards of the properties, describes in her wording that the plan is very messy. Homes are awkward on 3 of the parcels, and has concern about shared driveway. That one in particular, she talked about having several concerns with this revised plan, but then having the shared driveway for parcels A, B, and C is going to create some legal issues down the road. And so it looks like there was also quite a bit of conversation about just different, more logistical issues that were coming up with neighbors that they were experiencing. But in the end, the concern, I guess, that caught me was that she was raising, and I'm assuming was the reason for her ultimate no vote on this, was that, there's logistical and legal messiness about it, and that even though it seemed to be that there was an overall agreement that the plan itself was very messy, but that it was just better than the prior plan, to me is not a good reason to approve it. To me, that would be a reason to say if there's issues that we're identifying, now would be the time to fix it. If we're already fixing a plan, let's fix it the right way. Let's not just fix it and have it be haphazard. And to have, the benefit of the people who had, I think it said this was a 2-hour meeting, a 2-hour public hearing or something like that, on this issue. I appreciate the back and forth on that. Just from my read of the minutes anyway, I wasn't at the meeting, but in my read of the minutes, it just seemed like a lot of the discussion from the other side didn't really have a lot of good things to say about the plan. Just saying, really the one thing that I think sticks out is just saying, yeah, it's not the best plan, but it's okay and it's better than the current one. So I don't know. I guess to me, if we're going to go through and take a step of officially approving something, we should really be making sure that it's a good plan. It's correct. It doesn't create any kind of foreseeable legal issues. It doesn't have any logistical issues, that kind of thing. So anyway, that's just some of the things that stuck out to me in reviewing that.
I'm going to ask Gary if he might be willing to comment on that. I know, Gary, this well preceded your time on that.
I was on vacation that meeting,
Very good.
with you, so I can't really answer.
Certainly.
We have Victor, our zoning person.
Oh,
He's
sure.
hanging out back there.
Sure.
Also, we have one person on the Zoom call, and it happens to be the developer. So
Okay.
I don't know if you have questions either way, but I think Victor can address the initial one. But I wanted to make you aware that we do have, there's only one person on Zoom, and that's who it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Victor, do you?
Yeah.
Victor, would you step forward if you wouldn't mind? All right. Victor works in zoning for us here, and it's a new addition the last year and a half to 2 years. We appreciate you, Victor. And
September.
it's not even been, okay. Well, you seem like an old hand then. So, were you able to follow Catherine's points there, and at least from the zoning perspective, and be able to address that? Yeah.
Sure. So, exactly, what's the question?
Well, you felt he could address part of that, Dan. By the way, Victor, and it's entirely up to you, but as you're addressing this, if you want to remove your mask, it's entirely up to you. I just want to make sure we can hear you. If you don't, please just speak up. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm hard of hearing. It's not you. It's my ears.
Just to address the concerns that were brought up at the Planning Commission, she had some questions if those concerns were addressed adequately or if they were not addressed adequately.
I would say they were addressed adequately. Because really it was a comparison between the 2017 plan and the most recent plan, and they just felt like this more recent plan was better for that area.
I guess, in all fairness to you, maybe it wasn't so much a question as to me, I don't think Ms. Bullhouse would agree that it was that they were adequately addressed, hence the no vote that she made in the end. But yeah, to me it seemed like, well, were you? I didn't think your name was. Were you at this? Oh, you were at this meeting. Okay. Am I correct in reading the minutes to be that it was more of, and maybe that's kind of how you were just saying it, but that the plan that's being proposed is better than the prior one? It doesn't mean that the plan itself, that the board deemed that, or the commission deemed that it was actually like a great plan, or that there weren't any problems, but really they ended up voting yes on it because they felt, it's okay, but it's better at least than what it was. Is that kind of a...
Well, that is correct, but also as long as it meets the zoning ordinance, they really have to approve it if it meets the ordinance. And all the other issues like adequate driveway, access to parsons, make sure all the setbacks are met. Basically, it meets the ordinance.
So, Victor, from a legal standpoint, it meets all the requirements of Georgetown Township. And the Planning Commission voted, was it just one dissenting vote, can I ask?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it was the lone attorney on there.
Okay. Otherwise, it was unanimous, and they felt comfortable with it.
Yes,
So
sir.
we'd be looking at overruling them.
I'm sorry?
We would be looking at overruling them if we didn't agree with this, and could we be open to legal action if we were to overrule this?
I would say so because based on the plan, it meets the zoning ordinance.
I think to put it succinctly, and I understand Catherine's point of view too, which is there can be differences of opinion within the Planning Commission as to what site development and so on might be more efficacious, right? Hey, I think it would be better if we were to do this and not that and so on, but provided they meet the standards, okay, which the finding was that they had, even if you think, hey, I would probably do it a little differently if I were that developer, I still, finding those conditions met, need to grant that for them. And we are, as a board, unable or not in a position, unless we can find that somehow the Planning Commission failed to evaluate properly a review standard specifically and say they did not meet this and here is why. Absent that, we can't, my understanding is we can't do anything different than to approve of what they've granted?
Yeah, because the thing is, like I just said and he confirmed, that's not the vote, that's not at all what the discussion was. The discussion was, well, it's messy, it's not a great plan, but it's going to be better than the last plan. That doesn't mean that it's by itself that the vote taken was saying it fits everything appropriately.
I think you're looking at the sort of the summary of the dialogue, which probably there was some admission about why, this isn't great or that might be better. But the actual findings, the actual written findings have to be tagged with the review standards and specifically found, not in amorphous terms, but very specifically, here's how it met, here's why it meets the standards of review. And that's what we need to plan, or rather point to, so that if one of us as a board, or the majority of us, wish to overturn or deny what the Planning Commission has otherwise approved, we need to be able to point to and say, this is where it fails to meet a standard. And I guess my question to you, Catherine, would be, is there one of those that you think was not met in the evaluation by the Planning Commission?
I didn't see in here how anything was addressed that they were, and the concerns that she raised to me, especially the fact that there's foreseeable legal concerns, to me is an issue that shouldn't just be ignored. So I think that my opinion is that we would have the duty to not just go, well, it looks better, it's okay, because that looks like what the Planning Commission did. I'm not seeing in here where there's discussion as to any of the specific findings. The discussion was all about the concerns, and the concerns were not alleviated or addressed per se, as they were in the end. The board is saying, at least it's better than it was. So to me, that doesn't conclude with adequate findings that it should be adopted.
So
that's just my opinion.
They adopted the staff report. The staff report has the detail you're looking for, which I'm sure you read too. They may not have touched verbally in the meeting on every aspect of the staff report, but they ultimately adopted it as their findings of fact, if you will.
I saw no discussion on it, so the fact that there's zero discussion on the findings of fact, and the only discussion in the minutes here is about really the concerns that Ms. Bullhouse was raising, and in her mind, obviously, it wasn't addressed completely because she ended up voting no. And from my read of the discussion, the responses don't address the concerns either. So again, that's just my perception of it, but I don't think it's accurate to say that they were, that the findings of fact were actually specifically gone through and approved in that sense, but more of approved in the package deal about, this is something that's being requested, we're just going to, we're going to give it the overall okay and just move it on. So in that sense, there wasn't a finding of fact as to the specific things that were in the staff report. I guess that's what my point is.
Okay.
It would seem that the developer would almost for sure sue us because it's been approved by the Planning Commission. There's no definite reason of why we're denying it. I would assume they'd take us to court right away.
There were definite reasons in there.
Almost for sure.
I think if there's a motion, Catherine, it would center on one of those 7 review standards, pages 22 to 25 of the staff report. Is there one of those that you feel was not met, and that the Planning Commission was wrong?
You know what? If you guys want to vote your way, when I express what some of the concerns were that I see based on what somebody in the Planning Commission, with experience in this is raising, and that none of it was actually specifically addressed, and the staff member here that's reporting on it is confirming that my read on the minutes was correct. That's my take on it. I don't think it would be appropriate to go through with it. And no, it's not a foregone conclusion that there's, legal culpability to us to not approve this. I think that's ridiculous to say. But if the vote is 6-1 on this, I'm okay with that.
I don't think anybody's prejudging or viewing your concerns as being not important. I think we're asking more. I am, as the chair, asking if you have a motion, it's got to be specific to a particular
I didn't have a
review
motion.
standard. Okay.
I'm commenting in discussion on the motion that was presented.
Sure.
And so I'm not required to go through and have my opinion nitpicked. That's what I'm saying. I discussed the points that I wanted to raise, that she raised. You could take it or leave it, but that's the concerns that I wanted to share.
Dan, it might be useful, if you wouldn't mind addressing this, because this will come before us from time to time, and I can remember a discussion some years ago where we used to spend a good deal of time in review of these very things, and then it was more or less understood, look, as a board, there's only so much that we have in the way of maneuvering.
This is not exactly along the lines that you're suggesting. This is a rezoning. It's actually
I'm
a
thinking
strange one, so it's a little bit different than a site plan approval. You're really approving a rezoning out of a PUD. And that's part of the problem where they're looking at the plan before the PUD as it is now, and then to rezoning. And the fact that if you look at the plan, the pictures of it, some of the houses are already there, which is what's causing a little bit of the issue where they're working around some of the existing structures. And so that's some of the concerns, I think, right, of why they're saying it's better, because some of the structures are there, and so that limits some of what some might consider a reasonable change to make it ideal. But this is a rezoning, and we've rarely had a rezoning out of a PUD to just a general ordinance. It's because our PUD has certain requirements that they don't have to meet if they take it out, which is what they're looking at. So that's really what they're trying to do, to accommodate that existing area. So
for what it's worth, I've actually served on a planning commission and my prior community for several years, so this is not a new thing for me, but...
No, I wasn't saying it was new, but the reversal out of a PUD is what's new for us, and so that, I shouldn't say completely, but pretty rare. I can't remember what's happened before, but that's what's causing some of these issues, because we had a PUD plan covering this area, and now they're modifying them.
Am I right to say that we look at the 7 conditions, if you will, and we have to evaluate those to find whether we think the Planning Commission failed to reach the correct result?
Well, the trouble is you're spending more time on the plan than you are on the fact that it's a straight rezoning. And a rezoning to single family is essentially what the issue is. You're going from a PUD to a single family, which would be harder to, that's why you go along with it, because it's single family zoning is all over the area. And so that's really what they're asking for, to go to a single family zoning. And the fact that the plan is telling you that it meets the standards to occupy in that single family zoning, it's fine. And so you're spending time about this, you're discussing the plan layout, which maybe is not ideal because of existing conditions, but really before you is a decision of a rezoning.
Rezone, yeah. It kind of I was saying earlier this week, Catherine, my own concern with it was, if you go down Parsons, it's this undulating road. It's hard to imagine that is an access point for that many units up there, and yet that's not before us, nor something that, that's years ago been approved, and it's really within the purview of the Ottawa County Road Commission. But
correct.
Dan kind of brought me back to that too, which was to say, hey, that's maybe a legitimate concern, but that's really not before us. So I appreciate that reminder in terms of the zoning focus. Gary, yeah.
Victor, this was brought to the Planning Commission a month before too, and then the developer pulled it off the table. Do you remember that drawing?
Correct.
Was that drawing approved before, or was that something that came and then redid it again? Because that drawing was different than the one that's been approved. Do you remember?
That drawing, are you talking about the one that was supposed to go to the January 6th Planning Commission?
Yeah, and they had like several parcels coming on them. They only got 4 now, but that drawing seems like that's 6 or 7.
It was the same. It's still 4 parcels.
Okay.
They just have to realign the property lines and to address the Ottawa County Road Commission's concerns.
Correct. Okay.
So that was the only PUD standard that was not met at the time, and that's why it was tabled.
And they pulled it off themselves. We didn't table it as a planning commission. It was something that they pulled off knowing there was an issue there.
Correct. They pulled it off at the recommendation of the Ottawa County Road Commission to address their concerns.
So at that meeting, I was not at the February 3 meeting. I was at that meeting. That was a discussion because we said it had to come from Ottawa County, and they did go to Ottawa County and get permission, or at least got figured out what they could do and what they couldn't do as far as driveway access. And you see that here now, which they didn't have the month prior. So they did do their homework to come back the second time. I was not purposely was at the meeting before, and I remember the discussion, even though it wasn't on the table, we did discuss a little bit as a planning committee because it had been on the agenda. So just a little history. There was some talk about that at that meeting too. And he resolved a lot of those issues from what I can see in the notes that he did not have at that meeting.
I think that clarifies too, though, that you're right, that from my read of, looking through the minutes and whatnot, that there's, parts of discussing, things that the road commission was expecting, and then it seems like some of her concerns, really were more about, potential issues with, easements or, other issues that might come up with deeds or other things that because of the zoning change, which until you made that distinction, I didn't realize I wasn't clearly articulating that, but, so it's within the purview of what we would be doing to change the zoning, and when it is the PUD and you have less restrictions, then you have more wiggle room, I guess is the way to say it. So when you're putting these restrictions on and you have someone who's presumably an attorney who's dealt at least remotely with some of these issues in a business sense, that she's identifying that practically speaking, as time goes on, she sees that there's going to be some legal issues with that. That's where my concern is, that if we're already setting something up where, no plan might ever be perfect, but if there's something that could presumably be done because I don't hear her, I didn't hear her at all, but in the minutes, I don't hear her saying anything like, oh, this is just a terrible plan, we could never get this fixed. I take from it that she's like, something needs to be done, and it looks like she was agreeing that steps were made in the right direction, but she saw some additional concerns that she felt would be created by changing the zoning and not having those things fixed. So, I don't know. I think it would be worth that because, this is not just about one developer. This would be about, when properties are being removed and it's single family or whatever, and it's, generations of owners or at least a series of owners on each parcel as time goes on, there'd just be some issue where we would need to, I don't want to kick a can down the road. I'd rather just stop the problem now if we can. And I don't know all the specifics involved in that other than it sounds like there was somebody who had a lot of information more readily at her fingertips and was still concerned about it. So.
And I know no one's directed a question to the developer, but has he virtually raised his hand, or is he simply there?
He said he's there to answer any questions that you might have. So.
It'd be nice to have him make a statement if you'd like to, or at least offer him the opportunity, and it would give us a chance to try this technology.
And that's up to the chair, I guess, what he's looking for.
Yeah.
If it's about what I'm saying, I don't think anything he says is going to fix anything I'm saying because the concerns were raised by somebody who had the benefit of talking to him and hearing him for 2 hours and her concerns were still not addressed. So, and I don't have anything specific that is a question that's outlying that I think he could answer. Not that I wouldn't want to hear from him, but I don't want to put him on the spot just to try to answer some nebulous questions.
He can hear us right now. If he raises his hand, we'd welcome him.
He's happy to respond. It sounded like he's putting comments in the chat, so.
Okay.
He's happy to respond if you want him to.
Okay. Well, we haven't tried the technology, Dan.
Could we put him on the screen?
I'm waiting for the chairs.
I'd like to try it. I'm interested, but I'm also interested in how we do technology-wise. If we can pull this off. It'd be exciting.
Becky's got a.
What do you need from me?
He'll pick up through your mic.
Yep.
Just go ahead and greet him.
Excuse me?
There you go. You have permission to speak if you want to talk with us. We're going to see if we can all hear you.
Mr. Biker. Yeah.
Welcome.
Mr. Biker. Yeah.
Mr. Biker.
Hello, this is Joe Biker. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
You can as a board, yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. When Janine was talking about the, I think the legal issues, she was referring to the shared driveway, and basically on the revised map, parcels A, B, C, and D will be sharing a driveway. But each of those parcels, we specifically designed them to have at least 9 feet of frontage along Parsons. If there were to be a dispute in the future, they could conceivably each put in their own driveway if they want to. But we are also working to make sure that each of those driveways has deeded access and shared easements, so that they can have full access and use of the shared driveway that's going to be there. But if that's insufficient, and I mean we've worked with an attorney, Jim, and at Miller Johnson, who we're working with to put all this together. But if for some reason that becomes unsustainable or untenable, we're still able to, each person can put in their own driveway if they so choose. And so that was how I think that was the legal issue that Janine was concerned about. And also, parcels A, B, and C also have the access along Castle Bay Way, and we as the developer have the right to give each of them a easement to access Castle Bay Way, although it's pretty steep. So that's why we gave them frontage on both Castle Bay Way and on Parsons.
Okay, thank you for that statement, Mr. Biker. You're still there if anyone wishes to respond. I'm hearing none there. I would ask other board members if anyone else has any comments on the motion that's before you. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call then for a vote. I don't think it requires a roll call, but I'm going to do it anyways, if we would, on this one, please.
Supervisor?
Yes.
Treasurer?
Yes.
Schwam?
Yes.
Belding? Yes. Gill?
Yes.
Henry?
No.
Clerk is a yes.
Okay, thank you, each of you. That was item 11, and that motion is passed. Item 12, application for industrial facilities exemption certificate application from Automated Machine Systems, Inc., over there on Pine Ridge Court. This is simply a request tonight for a motion and approval of a resolution to schedule a public hearing and to request a follow-up report. Does someone wish to make that motion?
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. And just so everyone understands, we're not making the judgment tonight, obviously, before all the evidence is before you. We're simply setting up a public hearing. Any comments on that motion that is before you? Okay, hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? You know what? That one requires a roll call. So, if you would.
All right.
Ryan?
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
Mr. Treasurer?
Yes.
Mr. Schwam?
Yes.
Mr. Belding?
Yes.
Mrs. Teal?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Clerk is a yes as well.
Okay, thank you. Motion is passed. Item 13, review cable contracts. Review cable contracts. You had several attachments there which were rather lengthy, and I trust everyone has looked through. This is an item that has come before us in the past, I would say in the time I've been on the board, maybe a couple of different times. It's come up in various committees, and it's generally been something that we have I guess just monitored and sort of watched society, if you will. What we've noticed is that more and more people are they're getting their news from other sources. They're using YouTube. They're using Facebook and other mechanisms to communicate, to broadcast, etc. And so we we would like to consider tonight, or we'd like the board to consider whether you wish to make any decisions as it relates to the public education government, or the PEG fees, which are charged at a rate, I want to say right now currently at 1.5, or are we at 1? Someone help me. 1.5, I think?
1.5.
They're not all consistent, but yes.
Okay, not all consistent. All right.
Yeah.
So it is, it's a fee that those who are cable users in the township pay as part of their bill, and it is designed to be used for equipment for WCET. And so that is what it's specifically earmarked for. In other words, it can't be used for salaries or anything else. It's for equipment. And this has been the case for a number of years. As you see, there are various iterations of the contract that go back, you know, for, I think the earliest one we have here, at least that was an attachment, might have been 2012, and I'm sure it's longer than that. But the point is, it's a fee that's been paid by our township residents for years and years. And I think the building momentum, at least my own consideration of the topic over the years, has been that there seems to be less use, less need for more equipment. We always have a representative on that committee, as you well know, or on the WCET committee, and we're told that equipment-wise that they have a good amount of equipment, and that there isn't, at least it wouldn't seem a high need for additional funding in that respect. And since that's what PEG fees are earmarked for, the question has arisen from time to time, is this something that we want to continue to have our residents pay? Now, we don't receive that money, obviously. That's not something we benefit from. But it seems to me that if this board were to consider cutting that fee and eliminating that PEG fee, that it would amount to more or less it'd be akin to a tax cut, I guess you might say, to our residents. And I want to be clear in even bringing that up or mentioning that this is, I think at first when I heard this years ago, I thought of PBS, which obviously has been around for a long time. This is not PBS. This is, I believe, Channel 25, if I'm not mistaken. I don't personally have cable, but I think it's Channel 25. And it just doesn't get a lot of viewership over the years as trends have changed and new technologies become available. So as I look at it, it's a way of it's a way of returning back to our township residents if we were to cut that fee, eliminate that fee. Of returning money in their pockets. Again, as I say, sort of analogous to a tax cut. It would not be, it's not a decision if a motion were made and carried this evening, it's not a decision to eliminate WCET. That's not the question. The question is whether or not to reduce or eliminate PEG fees, which are earmarked for equipment, of which our general assessment is that they have sufficient equipment and they have a surplus. I'm sure that anyone who's in technology will never say, and especially if you work at the station, and we appreciate them, would probably say there's always a use that you could make. And there's always new equipment and new inventions, new things coming out, better ways of doing things. But by and large, they have good equipment. They have sufficient equipment, and there seems to be some surplus there. And it seems that the time has come with the diminishing use and viewership and the like, that I would like to have discussion tonight among the board, and I would even make a motion for the purpose of putting it in the context of a motion, and for discussion to say I would move that the board eliminates or vote to eliminate the PEG fees that our residents pay related to WCET and that equipment.
So moved.
All right. So it's been moved. I kind of did move it, but you're supporting that? Yep. That's all right. No, I want to make sure I'm speaking up too. So moved and supported. And so with that context, I put that before the board for any discussion. So anyone Floor is open.
How often are these contracts renewed?
Excuse me?
How often are these contracts renewed?
3 or 5? Oh, that one, 10, okay. So when I said 2012, was I right in that recollection as we're coming up upon, right, the renewal? Okay. It would. Okay, all right. Go on, Gary. So, yeah.
So it'd only be, we would drop the fees we could drop them for 2 years and we come back, listen, we could go to a 0.5% or whatever just to update some equipment later if we wanted to.
That is true. That is true.
So,
Yep.
right now they're all set, so
Yep.
we drop the fee and in 2 years you come back and review and you can add enough percentage just to get things back on track again, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point you make, Gary, which is, even though it's a 10-year contract, this would be an amendment, and future amendments could be made as well if the board's will was that it was necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good point.
Who currently is on WCET board from you are?
And John.
Okay. So we've got representation that can come back to us and say, hey guys, whatever they need for equipment, we need to look at renewing this.
They meet at 8 in the morning, and so the administration has allowed me to listen in and monitor a little bit, to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a feeling of what's going on, but I don't know well. Michael, you've been able to monitor, and you've been on there for quite a while. Could you kind of share with us what you think?
Yeah, so there's restricted fees and unrestricted fees. Unrestricted you could use for anything. Restricted were limited. I believe Georgetown, we give them about $160,000 a year in restricted.
130 or? Yeah, somewhere in there, yeah.
I can look.
I think it's like 150, 160 somewhere. But there was a surplus, and it's always an issue of this money, they buy whatever equipment they want, but there's such a pile of that restricted funds that it gets to a point where what do you do with it?
Sure.
We haven't had our yearly budget review to see where everything's sitting. As far as what the restricted balance is right now, I'm not sure. I don't know yet. Last time it was pretty high, pretty significant. And there was questions in the past too, and I had raised the question of sometimes restricted fees would kind of get used for something else, and I was stickler on that is we have to make sure that it's only used for what it's supposed to be used for. Then it could be legal trouble if it's used for something otherwise, and I wouldn't want the township to be held liable. So it's a surplus of restricted money that they're really limited on what they can do with it. So how much do you need?
Makes sense.
And if we were to go back in 2 years, if they needed money for more equipment, that option's there for that amendment, which is.
Michael, they're looking at totally revamping things. It looks, Alan's going to retire, I believe in December, and that'll make him eligible for full retirement. They've cut the staff dramatically, and then they'll have to look, what are they going to do in the future? And are they going to replace Alan? Seems like they're headed in that direction. And the Zoom meeting looks like about 15 people that are involved there in the Zoom meeting. Many of them are from Grand Valley. They're looking for a new vision for the program. And there seems to be a lot of interest. I'm impressed by Ken Crombie, and he directs it, and he seems to really be into this, along with the city manager of Hudsonville.
Patrick.
I'm concerned, would we be cutting the legs out from under them as they're trying to revamp it, and then Georgetown Township sends a message, we're looking at dramatically cutting your funds. They're trying to build it, and this would be the message they're getting from us. And I would encourage to have Alan come in here and talk with us, where we can ask him directly, is there this over surplus of equipment? And what are you going to be doing about funding? How do things look for your future? Becky and I took a tour about 3-4 years ago of Wyoming, and they've got a show place, and they've got their own location, and they were able to do, I don't so much, maybe some grants, but they were able to get a number of people to donate heavily. Their facility is incredible. I don't know what the future is going to hold for this. The fact that we've got the 3 communities here, they're so tightly bound, and the leadership of the other 2 communities are fighting to save this program, we'd be sending a very negative message. And I sure would like to have Alan address it before we came to a vote. I think that would be important. And I think for what he's invested in this program over almost 30 years, it is incredibly popular with the public. They televise sporting events, and it's helped bind our community together to a degree. The loss of the advance has devastated us. I just, in my lifetime, I've never seen things affected so much from losing something that I think the advance newspapers. I would like to see some of that picked up by WCET. Maybe that's not possible. But as these other communities are fighting to keep it alive, we're cutting the legs out from under them and kind of pulling the plug here. I think at least that message is what we're sending to them. And at least have Alan come here and talk with us so we can get it right from him. I think it would be a disservice to him to dramatically cut him and not have had him have a chance to talk to the board. That's how I feel.
My concern about that would be that this was already at committee, and then after committee, then it made it to the board. So if this was something that needed to have somebody else here or have somebody, provide some sort of specific report, it's not that the opportunity wouldn't be provided. The opportunity was provided, but it's on the agenda now, and it's not cutting the legs out from underneath a program when there's a surplus of funds that are sitting in there that can only be used for certain things. It can't be used for the salary to find a replacement for him, or to do probably any of the other things that I heard you mention, which are probably great things, but that funding only being able to be used for specific purposes can only, we don't owe anything to them. If we owe anything to anybody, it's to the residents of Georgetown Township. And right now they're getting billed for something that they're not seeing any benefit for. And even if there was equipment that could be purchased and used the funds for, if the viewership is, I can't even do the math right now, if it's 50 people in a week that might look at the program and we have 50,000 people in the township, that math, it doesn't justify charging everybody for. So I think there'd be some other, I think we have to be responsible with those funds, and more so that this isn't even funds that came through taxes that are then to us and then really entrusted to spend them appropriately. This is literally when all those people get a bill, it's going to be on their bill. So I think it would be, if it's something where we want to have, Dan or Jim or somebody, or Ryan reach out to whoever is trying to, the individuals you mentioned that are trying to revamp and revise, and just say, hey, we'd be interested in what you're doing. Maybe you want to come do a presentation. We could see. It just doesn't seem like that's something where, if it's so in the beginning stages of their program anyway, like Gary's question goes to that if we found that there was a need for the equipment and all the funds were spent and we wanted to go back and do that, it's not like we can't. So perhaps we just need to, reach out to them and just say, hey, we're interested in seeing what you have, and ways that we can work with that in a way that actually, will benefit our residents. I don't know, I'm just trying to strike a balance there, but.
Well, they won't be surprised. They'll be stunned. They won't believe it. And was Alan invited to the Finance Committee? And then to push this forward and not invite him in here after investing 30 years for this community is a slap in the face for him. I'd at least give that to him. Because and also we're saying the same thing to Ken. Ken Crombie is in charge of this. They've got another committee that they're trying to see what they can do to save this. And in the meantime, we're taking and cutting their PEG funds. They're not going to know how to interpret that. I think for harmony in our community, what would it hurt to table this and have Alan come in here and give a pitch and give a vision for his future? What would it hurt? Is there a deadline here that we have to do this within a certain period of time? I mean, a short period? I don't think so. Certainly I'd do him that dignity. And I think we're robbing them of that. I think they're stunned that this is even being discussed. You have school districts that think this is incredibly important. You have community leaders that think this is incredibly important. They may have low viewership. I don't know where the future's going to lead, but at least you go through a process with an individual before you do something like this to them.
But it's not taking funds away from an individual. You're talking about it like it's a personal assault on him. The funds don't go to him. They can't legally go to him. They can't do anything with him or his salary or his any kind of programs. It's literally just for a set purpose, and they haven't been able to expend the funds that are in there. So it's I don't see the point in trying to characterize it as some sort of like personal attack.
Let's listen to him. Why? What is the harm in listening to him?
Well, why wouldn't you have invited him to this meeting if you thought it was important to have him here for that?
I don't think this wasn't this was on our agenda, but it wasn't on our agenda with the motion that Jim made. It wasn't on our agenda, at least my impression was, as an action item. It was on our agenda to say, these are the documentation and here's some history and let's have a conversation. Now, Jim did make a motion and you did second it. But I think that, I won't speak for John, but it wouldn't have crossed my mind to invite Alan to this meeting until we had had a conversation where we could kind of see where each one of us was leaning. But given Jim's motion, I agree with John that Alan, as much as it can't go personally to him, it's his blood, sweat, and tears, it's his vision for WCET that has over the last 30 years brought it to where it is currently. So as much as it isn't him personally, it's his baby. It is where he has carved out his professional identity. So to some extent, whether it should or shouldn't, it will feel personal to him. And so I agree with John that if we are actually talking about taking action and cutting funding to WCET when it's not funding that it's not like a tax that we're imposing on all of our residents, it's the people that have signed cable contracts. Those people have agreed to their contract price when they signed their cable contract. So it would be a nice little benefit to them. I'm not against that. But if we're going to take action, then I agree with John that we should at least give Alan the courtesy of an invite and let him come in and tell us what WCET has done or try to get a feel for where they're headed in the future before we make a sizable decision to pull funding from them, is my opinion.
Thank you. Gary?
A couple questions. Number one, you said that the money collected is only for equipment?
The PEG fees is a restricted fund. It can only be used for certain things, hardware, computers.
So it does not pay the salary of anybody there.
It
just
pays
for equipment.
Yep, and that's been the issue.
And then the second question, you said that they haven't done an annual review, so you really don't know how much money they have?
No, typically we do the budget, it'd be next month. Where it's kind of laid out what salaries are. And it's been changing quite a bit with what's happened in the past year. So as far as the staff is less than what it was. They lost a couple of people who moved on.
So if somebody were to come, they need to bring how much money they have on hand already.
Yeah, as far as timing-wise, it'd be perfect because I'm sure Alan's working on the budget right now. So we'd have current numbers.
But if they have enough equipment, and the money is only for equipment, then I'm trying to figure out, if they don't need any more equipment, I'm trying to figure out what the funding would have to go for then.
You have a team right now that's working at trying to redevelop and make a new vision for WCET. Why would we handicap them like this? But in addition, though, you have the most important, the biggest hitters in our community are on this committee and trying to make it work. The biggest representatives from each school system, and then plus the city manager of Hudsonville and city manager of Granville. They feel that strongly. And while they're trying to build, if we were to say, by the way, we're going to cut this, just because we feel you have enough monies in these areas, I think their next reaction would be, did you look at the budget? Did you go over? Are you sure? And if you talk to Alan, this thing with Alan is that this has been his baby, and he's been able to draw all kinds of volunteers to make this work. And there's many, many people that support it. Now, their viewership is probably low. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. They might be able to redesign themselves like Wyoming did. But we're not even giving them a chance if we make this call. But to not have him at least give a presentation, I can't hardly believe that. He should have a right to defend himself. So we're making a decision that will dramatically affect him, someone that's given to the community for years, and we're not giving him a voice at all. Just that is reason enough to have him come in here and give him a chance to talk and make a presentation.
Oh, sorry.
One more question.
Yeah.
Does this have to be decided, does this contract run annually, or is this something we can do anytime, or?
I think, as you asked earlier, I think there is opportunity to make this change, now or
A month from now?
or whatever.
2 months from now?
Yeah.
So, I'll make a motion, we table this to give Alan a chance to come in.
Take yours off.
And either to the finance committee or to the board. I'm gonna make it his choice and get some more information.
You have to take yours off first.
Are you moving then to amend my motion, or are you making an entirely new motion?
I'm bending to table your motion,
Yeah, okay.
which is an up or down vote.
Yeah, I don't think that, okay.
Let me see.
I was
Yeah,
looking it up.
Okay.
It's really looking as a motion to postpone action.
Yeah,
Is what
yeah.
it's really looking to
On the
do.
motion that's before you, so I don't have to
But
withdraw
you
mine.
need support for that, so.
Okay.
Could we be specific with the township board rather than the finance committee? I'd rather have him have a platform.
I would rather let him choose what he would like to do. Would he rather address the finance committee or the board? And that recommendation come from finance or it come to the board? I don't care, it can come either one, but I'm trying to let him decide I don't know the man, so I'm giving him opportunity. If he doesn't want to come to the board, he come to finance committee, which if you think that's a better venue for him, that's fine. But at least he can bring the information he needs to, and then that information will be brought to the board.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
As there's a motion on the table, did I hear, Becky, did you
Yes,
second?
I
All
will
right.
second that.
Discussion about the motion to table at this time. I guess one question
I
I'd like.
thought we don't discuss.
No
the
discussion on the table. It's an up or down
Okay,
vote.
all right.
Seconded.
There's
the
things I wish,
vote, right?
okay, once you did that, you more or less cut off the discussion on the prior one, all right?
Yep.
All right. Well, then we take a vote on it.
Yeah.
We can do that by roll call.
I'll go the other way around. Mrs. Henry?
On the motion to table, correct?
Motion to table it, correct?
Motion to table.
Correct.
No.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Velding?
Yes.
Mr. Schwam?
Yes.
Mr. Treasurer?
Yes.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
Clerk is a yes.
All right. Appreciate that, and Dan, you'll sure get in touch. And frankly, I don't know if it was specific to that discussion surrounding your tabled motion, but if he wanted to come to both, he could for that matter.
He may,
Yeah.
I'm letting him decide, one, because I don't know the individual. I think it's unfair to put somebody on the spot at a board if he feels that's just too much, so.
Sure. All right. That was item number 13. Item number 14, appoint an alternate for the Board of Review. Is there a motion to approve our proposed alternate? Who moved? I'm sorry.
I moved.
Moved, okay.
Right,
Moved and supported. All right, any discussion? I know you saw the alternate's application, got quite a bit of experience, I think, from over in Wisconsin, so.
And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, this is very rarely used, an alternate?
Correct. Recognizing there is increased quarantine concerns this year, so we really wanted to have the alternate in place in the event that happens.
Good. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, it's carried. Item 15, change to code enforcement complaint form. Anyone wish to make a motion about that subject?
I would make the motion to authorize the superintendent to change the information on the complaint form. although I'm not sure as far, and maybe wording we could bring up. I don't know if we want to talk about wording, if it's in, the wording's in the motion. If I want to hold off on making that. Okay. All right, I would make that motion then, to change the information on the complaint form, and to end the practice of redacting the information based, or listed under the person making complaint section when a copy of the form is requested under the Freedom of Information Act or otherwise.
Okay, moved and seconded. All right, discussion.
I guess this was an issue that I have looked at for years, and seen it over the years kind of morph into some residents have taken it upon themselves to drive throughout the township on a daily basis looking for violations just to file complaints, which is fine. If somebody's not in compliance with our ordinances, they're in violation. But up until this point, and I don't know if it was always anonymous or at one point it.
Regardless, at one point you didn't have to identify who you were, even for the benefit of the township.
Yeah. So what I'm suggesting, the motion was, if somebody were to make a complaint, that information would be the person who has the complaint against them could FOIA request that, which I just believe if they have a right to face their accuser rather than some anonymous complaints that's just running around town looking to start trouble. And I know the pluses and the minuses are, well, there'll be retaliation, which we can't control that kind of thing. On the other hand, if a neighbor has a complaint, they could be retaliating against 5 people on the street now because they think this neighbor did it or this one, and they just go down the street, and it might not even been somebody in their neighborhood. So I just, in the spirit of transparency, I wanted to put that out there because I also believe any complaints, first, talk to your neighbor. Discuss maybe, your lawn's over 14 inches. Maybe the mower's broken down or the husband's having health problems and he can't go out and mow it, and that's the issue. Talk to him first, try to resolve it, and if not, file a complaint.
I didn't even realize this was an issue, that it was happening where a complaint could be made in our township where the person's information would be redacted before a FOIA request was provided. But that doesn't fall in one of the exceptions of the statute. So, good or bad, I agree with everything you just said, but even if I didn't, we can't just redact things just because nobody wants to have their information shared. We have to follow the FOIA statute. So, it's kind of along the lines of, you have the right to confront your accusers, that kind of thing. Again, it's not even something that was on my radar that I even thought about that was even happening, but now that it was brought up, whoever was the one to bring it up, we at least have to fix that, so.
I was surprised to see this because I thought Dale Moore did this years ago, because we had one gentleman that he filled 3 binders with complaints against other citizens that he drove the community and kept our people very busy. And his name was kept private. And when he was elected, I thought within a short period of time, Dale had that changed, that if you accused someone, your name became public. Was that changed again?
What was changed with him is you had to do a written complaint. Before, people would do these anonymous complaints.
Right.
That's what was changed. There's no more anonymous complaints allowed, but we still had to know, but we weren't providing the information of the person to anyone else. So that's the only part that's changed. And now that they're going to take that part off there and say this is a public document. So.
Okay. Dale gave the impression that it was the name was available, so I didn't know that.
I guess I would say, looking at the other side of it, I did some investigation here. We don't currently have, that I'm aware of, a problem with people complaining too often or being obnoxious, such as was described. It's certainly open to abuse, but that it's not something that we're responding to right now because we're being barraged with complaints. My concern is really that we're exposing that individual, and you mentioned it, but to retaliation. To me, the focus ought to be on there's either a violation or there isn't. So if I'm taking a walk in my neighborhood and I'll give the example. When I lived in a different community a number of years ago, sometimes you get accustomed to seeing things that never dawns on you. I thought, I've walked past this abandoned car for 6 years. It's sitting, it's even got its own dedicated little cement slab in the front yard. Why is that there? And I remember calling the city. I had to fill out something like this to say, that really ought to be hauled away. I'm not trying to be difficult, but it's not right, and sure enough, it was gone, within the next 2 weeks. I think the focus in complaints like that ought to be on, do you have that abandoned car in your yard? Are you running a business out of your garage with people coming and going? Not who complained about it, but rather, are you or aren't you in the wrong? And so to me, is there a necessity to invite the potential for retaliation just so I can maybe know who to be angry at or who to hate or who to try to, find something wrong with you now and we begin to have a tit for tat going on? I think it's problematic. And I think, frankly, further, if you require this, you're right, it will cut down on people filing complaints, which, as I said previously, I don't think currently we have some problem with that, but it will invite people to call you and I to say, well, I'd like you to bring this up. You talk to Rich, or, hey, this is going on, and this can become you and I doing these things and reporting these things if we even choose to, right? So it's just going to shift that methodology, I think. And there'll be some who go, look, I don't care if they know or not. All right, great, But I think that anonymity is important because it isn't about who's complaining as much as about what's being complained about. It's either true or it's not true. I suppose if you had someone turning them in all the time and they weren't true and you had their name attached to it, you might simply not begin to respond to them. If you're in our code enforcement position, you just go, you know what, I'm going to deep six that one. But that's my personal opinion. I'm not treading onto what Catherine's saying, which is to say, if there was a majority of you here that said, we like this practice, let's continue it, we may need to get a legal opinion. I don't know that that's been asked in the past, and I can tell from your comments, Catherine, you question, well, maybe you may like the system now, but you really can't do it that way. I guess I'd want confirmation of that fact, but first we have to figure out if there's even a majority support to hang on to our current practice, of which I think is favorable. I don't think we want retaliation. I don't think we want the potentially unhinged to know who to go after and who to hate.
Then my question for you is, right now, while we waste time and money on doing a legal opinion, when we have two attorneys sitting on the board and everybody else can pull it for you, it's not that complicated. There's only one statute that has the exemptions. Let's say tomorrow we get some requests, and then Friday Ryan gets a FOIA request because somebody wants to know. And what do you want Ryan to do? Do you want him to violate FOIA? Or do you want him to mislead the complainant in thinking that when they filed the complaint that it would be not shared with anybody?
Catherine, you're making my point before, which is I'm saying that issue, you're simply saying, I feel very confident about it. Well, you know what? It wouldn't cost that much if it came to it to get such an opinion. I know that certain municipalities have an attorney at their meeting every meeting.
Why do we need an attorney?
To talk about
we have
expense.
to.
That's fine, but neither one of us is an expert in planning and zoning necessarily. And even if we were, I'm fine with having a third party be able to render an opinion because I know that I'm not the be-all, end-all on that particular point of view. People didn't elect me to be the town attorney. They elected me to be their supervisor.
No, but they elected you to follow the law, and
okay, and you're confident of that, and I'm not. Okay.
Everybody here is presumed to know the law, though. We can read that. That's not a complicated thing. It's not like looking up a bunch of cases and trying to figure out how facts fit together. This is literally one statute that we can look up. What exemption is it? And we're presumed to do this. It's on Ryan. If we're putting the township at risk, again, I didn't know this was even a thing. And so seeing that part in there, I didn't even realize, I didn't even read the FOIA aspect until right before the meeting. But seeing that it's there and we know that it's an issue now and we're telling people that we're not going to disclose their information, it has to fit one of the exemptions on FOIA. And it's not like Ryan, every single time he gets a FOIA request, at least correct me if I'm wrong, he doesn't call and get a legal opinion about it because there's a set It's one of the easier worded laws that we have, so we have to follow it. It's not like a choice, and if it's just a better, anonymity is important. This isn't about our opinions on it. It's about following the law, and it's not a complicated one. We have no exemption available to us. So, and I'm not comfortable with spending oodles of money on legal fees when we're presumed to know the law. People voted for us because they figured out that, gosh, these people are competent enough that they're going to read things, they're going to know what the law is as they, we're creating new laws when we vote on ordinances. If we can't even be trusted to read the state law, why can we be trusted to create local law?
Fine. Your opinion is well noted. There's three of you that are in favor of this change. Is there a fourth voice? You haven't spoken yet, Becky. Do it. John, I know you thought it was already that way, so you might be that fourth. I'm not sure.
Well, and I was going to correct you too. The complainant that I knew of that was going out on a daily basis looking for things was not the one. There's a new one now. So this has happened a lot in the past, and people continue to do it. So
I'm not sure about that, Michael, but
we discussed it at finance, but you weren't at that meeting.
I was not at that meeting
last week.
Yeah.
I don't think it's appropriate to poll people, though. I think if we're going to do a vote, we just have to do a vote.
How about this? Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion that is in front of you?
I would. My 2 cents, not being an expert on the law, is going back to when there was the issue in the neighborhood where the neighbors were complaining about someone who had ducks. Do you remember that a couple years ago?
Ducks.
Dylan's ducks. I happen to know the person who filed the complaint. And when her complaint form was FOIA'd, her contact information was redacted. And she was thankful for that because that hit the local news in a big way. And local news reports were shared widely on social media. And one of the local news stations had gone so far as to scan her complaint and put it on the screen during the news report. People got a hold of handwriting samples from Christmas cards that neighbors sent to each other and things like that to try to figure out which neighbor it was. Which is silly, and ultimately it became widely known exactly who had filed the complaint, at least widely known within their neighborhood. But my fear is for something like that, there were people with very strong opinions about that. People who were even making threatening statements online related to that topic. And if they had had access to this resident's name, address, phone number, because we hadn't redacted it, I would have been in fear for her safety on her behalf. And that was a fair complaint, regardless of where it all landed in the variance that was issued in those kinds of pieces. She felt like her living conditions as a resident in our community were not of the quality that they were supposed to be based on an interaction with a neighbor. And so I just say that, not that I have a strong opinion on this, but that issue was important enough that it should have hit our code complaint. It wasn't somebody driving around measuring grass. It was an actual real issue that was impeding the safety and, the atmosphere of her parcel of property. It was a fair complaint to be filed. And if her contact information had not been redacted before it was put on the news, she would not have been safe. So that is just a factor that I think that we should consider. Is that, like if somebody files a complaint against me and I FOIA it to find out what that was, I'm comfortable with then, you have the right to face your accusers with it being released there. But I don't know that when we're releasing them to the media, or we're releasing them to someone that's going to post them all over social media, that is frightening to me as far as the safety of our residents and people deserving to feel like they are safe when they bring something to our attention. So I just throw that out for consideration because I believe it is part of this broader topic. but I don't have a strong opinion either way, with the exception of when things are released to the media.
I wonder, Dan, could you help me on a question then? Would it be, if someone were to call and say, look, I have this issue, the person's got a car sitting in their front yard for the past 6 years. Well, you can make a complaint, but it's subject to FOIA. Okay. I don't want to make a written complaint. I'm just telling you. Okay, you got a problem. Would we say, we're not passing that on, we're not going to investigate unless you put your name down and you fill out a form?
That's what we've been told, so correct. That's what we would say.
So we'd say, unless you file it in writing, we will, keep that in our own minds and not bring that to anyone's attention.
From our perspective, we would get less complaints, but you would get more complaints.
Right. It would bring it to us.
Because we would say, no, we can't handle that complaint. I'm just guessing then they would contact their official.
Right.
But I don't know how many that would be.
But then, much as I think, we would be under no obligation then to do anything with that necessarily. No. Someone may call me up and I say, well, you got a good point, but if you don't fill it out, I'm not going to go anywhere.
Right or wrong, to Catherine's point, though, what we're claiming is Section 13(1)B, and maybe that's, she doesn't agree with that, but that's what we're claiming for that exemption, right?
Did you read that?
We're not law enforcement, though.
Well, they're code enforcement acting. I'm saying what I'm claiming. I'm not arguing with the point, but that's what we're claiming, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can't just, what it says is that if you're going to claim that, it's for investigating records compiled for law enforcement purposes, but only to the extent that the disclosure as a public record would do any of the following: interfere with law enforcement proceedings, or deprive someone of the right to a fair trial or impartial administrative adjudication. It's talking about criminal investigation or, I'm not going to read the rest of it, but anyway.
Items 3 and 4.
What's that?
We just claim items 3 and or 4, depending on the situation.
Items 3 and 4.
So,
3 or 4.
You have the interfere, but what we claim is constitute an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. That's where we use that to redact.
And it would be an interesting legal opinion from an attorney, but I don't sense that for most of you this is turning on that point. If you don't like the system we have and you think it ought to be like Michael's saying, then so be it.
But they'll know that going in if we change the form. To his point, they'll know that going in before they complain. At that point, they'll know it's subject to being exposed.
And that's what I'm saying, because let's say that we pay any amount of money, that would be really irresponsible of us, of our taxpayers' funds, but let's say we pay an attorney to read the very simple law to us, and they say that you can't, you can't exempt from disclosure just because it's not in the course of a criminal proceeding, it's not a criminal investigation, yada, yada. That's what the cases say, whatever. So let's say they say that, and then Ryan gets a request that backdates to when the form looks like this, though, then we've set somebody up for failure because they thought they had the protections like you're talking about, but then we don't. That's the concern that I would have because, again, either in that situation then either Ryan's not going to follow the law or we've misled somebody to make a complaint feeling safe to have the anonymity when they didn't have the anonymity. That's my concern.
Would there be a grandfathering or anything?
No, there's no grandfathering. If you're not following the law, you're not following the law.
That's good.
So, my opinion is that if now is the time to change it. My concern is that if there's any question of whether or not they can get a FOIA on us or not, I certainly don't want a situation where something escalates like the duck, and then they come in by us and they go, now we want all this information, and we deal with the whole situation because we didn't correct this when we don't have a situation right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
My concern is that we don't have any situations where we have to deal with a FOIA on some sort of a code enforcement complaint. But if we did have one and it escalates into something that it shouldn't, and then they come back and say, well, we're not going to give you that or we redacted that, then they come back and go, how did you redact that? That's technically illegal. Then you're going to find out where your legal fees are because now they're going to be able to subject us to something that we shouldn't because we didn't do what we're supposed to do.
But Gary, are you suggesting we get a legal opinion right now?
I don't think we need a legal opinion. I think the FOIA is there. You can get whatever you want. I mean, we're public. We are a government entity. We don't have nothing hidden. If you decide to come in and you want to fill out that form, you got to put your name to it. That's just the way it is. I mean, you can FOIA anybody to see how many traffic tickets you have or whatever you do. I mean, that's public knowledge. Sorry, but that's part of the deal. It's called a spine. If you're going to fill things out, you got to have a spine.
Dan, do you know what other areas are doing, our neighbors, Granville, Hudsonville?
No, I don't know, and I'm sure all of them don't even require written complaints, so I'm sure there's a whole gamut of different methods.
Okay.
So.
I didn't hear what you said there, Dan. You said I'm sure they don't even require a complaint.
Sure, all of them don't require a written complaint. Some may be actually actively looking for this stuff as a form of the staff as opposed to us. We rely on more complaint-driven. Others may be relying, having an enforcement person looking for the problems themselves. So you have a whole different type of enforcement.
Now, our enforcement person goes on he handles over 900 of these a year. And most of them he's able to handle by himself.
I don't remember the number of inspections, but it's not all complaints, it's inspections. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Would there be anything that would prohibit the township, again, I look to you, Dan, because you may have faced this before with this question, that would prohibit us from changing our policy and permitting people to simply make a verbal complaint? So as not to create a record.
What simply is going to happen, someone's going to call you and say, you please make this complaint on my behalf, and you can sign it, and then it's good. So the problem will be solved another way. They're just going to contact one of you and say, hey, I've got this complaint. I don't want my name on it. Would you put your name on it? And you will say okay, and you'll sign it.
I will not say okay, just for the record.
I mean, if you're uncomfortable with the complaint, if you agree with them.
Well, either way, I don't think it's appropriate.
Sure, but anybody can file a complaint on it if there's an issue. So I'm just saying, if you agree with them, you'll pass the complaint along, and if you don't, you won't. So. And
for what it's worth, to put it in perspective, I know you were asking about the other communities, but in a different context, if you think about stuff that's like the most most private situations that would be in the government setting, like somebody's going through a really bad divorce, or a child protection proceeding, or things like that, where there's a criminal case and it involves it's a criminal sexual conduct case. As someone who's been a public defender, as someone who's been a lawyer guardian ad litem for children in abuse and neglect cases, and who's done family law for a lot of years, I can tell you that when I first got into it and I realized that those records are open to the public, I kind of cringed. I realize the reasons now for that, but the things that the everyday average person wouldn't think would be open to the public are open to the public. It's very rare that you have, even in those settings, even in a really terrible, awful child abuse and neglect case, all of the pleadings that talk about those allegations totally open to the public. The only part of the file that's not open to the public are the CPS reports. They're called the social file. Everything else is, but in a divorce case, there's some new rules out now, but basically that have, like social security numbers on them. That's not public. Everything else is public information. So, if you have kids that end up having to testify against, one parent or the other, or you have, something terrible and awful and ugly that nobody should have to see, that's something that it's a public setting. People can get the documents, people can come and sit in the hearings. So, the fact that it might seem to jolt the conscience in terms of what you were talking about with, that there are times where, gosh, it doesn't seem appropriate that the media would then go and blast that. I would agree with you. It's not appropriate. What I'm concerned about is that maybe we think there should be a change in the law, but we're bound by what the law says. So that's what my concern is that it's even in context with the other laws, with the other parts of government, with, and I would argue that when you go to the township and you make a complaint, you have a lesser expectation of privacy than if you have to file a divorce case or your spouse files against you. I mean, you didn't bring it into this, court government realm, and yet all your dirty laundry is available to the public. So it's one of the unfortunate aspects of how our system works, but it's there. So, I mean, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody here. And all the opinions that we talked about, I understand. my concern is that whether I like it or not, we have to follow the law. So.
To borrow from something that was said on an earlier topic tonight, this is not a hair on fire issue. It's not something that has to change this evening.
Except for it does.
No, please. It's not something that has to change this evening. And, you know, I believe, for all we know, that defense or that exception in the law may have even been decided in the form of a published case on point with a situation such as a township or city trying to enforce the very thing we're talking about. So I'm going to employ some modesty. I'm not the be-all, end-all of knowing that particular provision and how it's been interpreted and applied in the courts. It wouldn't be that hard, nor that expensive. It wouldn't be oodles of money to get such an opinion. And if that opinion were not strong enough, or if the board felt as a majority, you know what? I see that they say that they think it's arguable. I want something more safe than arguable. I'm going to vote for, you know, changing the policy. We could do so at that time.
Jim, I'd support that. I think Becky's comment was incredibly compelling. I mean, that went nationwide, and her life would have been at risk.
It would have.
I've seen the bills, so has Ryan, and when it's a bill from an attorney, it's oodles. It's always oodles.
So a township like ours that rarely turns to counsel, although they do, and to suggest that somehow we've been employing practices here that have never been looked at by an attorney is a false notion. We've had an attorney who has looked over our ordinances, and we've received, we've received input in the past as it relates to what we have adopted. It's not to suggest that somehow we adopted this blindly or without any sort of legal modicum. And I'm just not sure. I'm not sure that it would stand up or it wouldn't stand up. I know that there are some risks, though, with people disclosing. And on that basis, I'm opposed to a change at this time. And I don't think there's any urgency to make that change this evening as opposed to the next time we meet. But I'm sorry, go ahead. I call the question.
There is urgency, because if you're not following the law, you have to fix that. You can't just do that willy-nilly and just decide when you want to. So
I don't think you're right, Catherine. So, I mean,
okay.
you
can read it if you want. You actually haven't read it, but I'll even hand you my phone if you want. But I'd call the question, because we're going in circles and we have to follow the law.
Good. We're glad to call the question. Everybody felt like they've spoken to it now? All right. Why don't we take this by roll call vote, please?
Supervisor.
No.
This is, hold on, is this to table it?
No.
No, this is the motion on the floor.
The original one. Okay.
Original motion.
Supervisor, no. Treasurer.
Yes.
Mr. Swam.
No.
Mr. Velding.
Yes.
Mrs. Steele.
No.
Mrs. Henry.
Yes.
And the clerk is a yes.
All right. Passes 4-3. Okay. All right. So at this time, we come to the second public comment portion of the evening. If anyone who's here this evening wishes to step forward and address the public, rather address the board, you've got 3 minutes to do so on any topic you like. It could be something we talked about tonight. Mr. Bosch, why don't you be the first? Welcome.
Pleasant Drive. I'd like to spend just a couple minutes giving kudos to our fire chief. I had an opportunity to bring a car down to DeWitt's Auto for a neighbor and talk to Gene and explaining the fine presentation that the fire chief made last time. Fire chief talked about different stations and different equipment we had, and also talked about the evaluation and described it and how disappointed the chief was that we came so close to getting that next category 3. And then Gene told me, and he's the assistant fire chief, that our fire chief on his own went back to the supervisor who sent out the evaluation team, mentioned a couple things to him that they may have missed or something new, and the supervisor looked at it, listened to what our fire chief said, and now, because of this gentleman's work, we have number 3 rating, which helps every family in Georgetown as far as house insurance is concerned. We get a better rate. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our fire chief for doing that. As he talked, you see how proud he was of the whole fire department. I sensed a reticence on his part to talk about himself. I love to talk, So I'm taking this opportunity to give a shout out to the fire chief.
Shout out to the fire chief.
Thank you for doing that.
All right. Thank you, Chief Dana. Thanks for bringing it up, Spash. Sir.
Oh, my name's McCloskey. I'm at 3540 Baldwin Street. This thing you're talking about, the zoning, you people don't follow your zoning because you don't go through with it. I've been fighting the pizza place down there in 36 in Baldwin with his lights. He's violating the law with the way his lights are shining on his sign. I don't care about his sign. He can have his sign. But they were installed wrong, and I have put in a request that he is violating it, and I have got a sheet. If I knew that, I would have brought it all with you and handed you all a piece of paper of all the violations that is doing. He accused me of breaking his lights. His lights have been broken. I haven't had nothing to do with it because I'm trying to do it legally. Other people must have broke his lights. He sent the sheriff up here to have me arrested, accuse me of damaging his lights, his vandalism. Now, if you people were following your law, you would have taken care of it. But you don't do your own. And you told me, Jim, if I don't like the light shining in my kitchen, put blinds up. Remember that?
Blinds. I said get darkening blinds because we found that he wasn't in compliance.
I don't need blinds in my kitchen.
Sure.
My kitchen on my house is on the west side, and it's right there. And one thing too, I probably got one of the oldest houses in Georgetown. Probably of the 5 oldest houses, mine is one of the oldest. Okay? I don't think I should be punished that way at all. And your zoning guy, you told me to go ahead and sue you.
Please address the chair.
Okay.
Yep.
Huh?
Please address me. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm pointing at man. I try to talk to him about the zoning guy that you drive around that you do. He won't even come on my property to talk about it. I've got pictures at 10 o'clock at night, pitch dark, shining into my kitchen. And it's a terrible light. Now in 2017, I had a cataracts removed and my eyes were pretty sensitive. It's gotten a little better now. But in the summertime, you've got trees and stuff will kind of block it. But right now in the wintertime, you have nothing. And the light still shines in my kitchen. Zoning guy won't even do anything about it. I've talked to Manette about it, talked to everybody in there, and they don't do anything about it. So you people do not, you don't pressure the people to do and all the stuff you talked about tonight. I talked to Mike about it. He knows about it. And even Manette drove down there, and it ended up, she knows the light is bright. But you won't do anything to the pizza place because he makes you big tax money.
Sir, may I ask you a question? I haven't seen your complaints before. But
it's been years ago.
I'm just curious. Are you saying that it violates our ordinance just because it's too bright, or is there something else about it?
That's one part of it, and it shines on the roadway when people are driving west. You come up to that intersection, it's a bright light.
Okay. Is it those two things? I just want to make sure.
There's more. I got a whole list of things that is violating a certain number of ordinance. But you people don't do anything about it. You won't do anything about it.
Duly noted. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay? So everything you talk about doing stuff, you don't do. You're lying about it.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board this evening? Any topic? And seeing none, we'll close the second public comment period at this time. Go to item number 17, discussion and general information that the board would like to bring up for our edification or any other purpose. So, anyone? Oh, that's right. Catherine, de minimis, the clothing. Yep.
Well, I had a couple of other, potentially quicker because I don't know what the discussion was on that de minimis thing. The first thing is I'm assuming it was just an oversight. this is going to be our 6th meeting if I can count right. I don't know, because sometimes we've had our meetings canceled, but back in November, you had asked us about if any of us were interested in doing our prayer for guidance, and you had said you were putting me on the list.
Yes.
Didn't know if that was...
Well, I did communicate. There was more than one of you that said you'd be willing, and I don't choose the rotation, but I think it's duly noted that we should expand that rotation. And you're right. It hadn't occurred to me until you just said that I think John has opened prayer the last 2 meetings, and several of you have graciously agreed and want to be in that rotation. We're all for it. So,
I mean, I'm not saying anything against your prayers, John. That's you do a great job.
Okay, thank you.
So I believe it's both Gary and Catherine. Yep. Did I have that right? Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't taking it as a personal affront. I just figured it.
Nope. Thanks for bringing that up.
And before I forget, I had kind of asked after some meetings, and then I don't remember if it'd be a clerk thing or if it'd be a superintendent thing. You had forwarded me a couple articles that had come from something we were all supposed to be getting. It's there's 2 of them. I think it might be the Michigan Township Association and is it MMA?
MTA, and then
Michigan Municipal?
MTA.
MML. Yeah, those. How do I?
You just sign up on it.
Well, I was
sign right up on there, right?
I thought that they usually send the clerk a list for updated names. We'll follow up.
They did not, but I can check it.
Yeah, we'll follow up.
Okay. So yeah, that's right. Now that you said it,
Yeah.
And Catherine, just so you know, we have had members certainly in the past, and we encourage people who want to attend maybe the MTA seminars or part of a weekend that they'll have, that even some of your expenses can be covered and so on as education, training, et cetera. So
I have to get the notice first before I know when the
Sure.
seminars are.
No, I understand. And of course, as you might imagine, it's virtual right now, but yeah, they've got some really useful classes. So yeah.
I went to a trustee retreat, my first summer on the board, and it was incredibly informative. It was just all different sessions from the Michigan Township Association. And so certainly when that comes around again, I'll forward it to you just in case you haven't seen it. But I think that it came in like March or April because the retreat was in July or August.
Thank you. The other concern I have isn't a huge concern, but I just want to make sure that we are following through with our procedures and things that we talked about. And unless I'm not remembering something correctly, when we talked about doing this Zoom element of the meeting, I thought we had some significant concerns about, basically to address some of the concerns that were raised. One of the ways we were going to do it was to make sure that we had video of the people that were going to do that. And so I noticed that we had the one person by Zoom commenting, there was no video. So I just want to make sure that we're going to be consistent. I'm assuming had I piped up and decided to say something, the guy could have just simply turned his video on, but I figured I'd just wait till the end of the meeting. So going forward, since if we're going to continue this, I just want to make sure that we're consistent. We do have the video. And excuse me, and actually, my next comment was just more of I don't know if it would have been you or Dan or Rod, somebody that would have, on the wording that's on the beginning of our notice or our agenda. Anybody? Takers? Okay. I just thought it was some nice wording about the way that it was.
I wrote the first couple of paragraphs in an effort towards transparency down through the services being made available as we continue, those 3 paragraphs.
Yeah, okay. So that's, yeah. So I like the way, and then to tie in, that if this doesn't work for you, we definitely invite you to attend our meetings in person, blah, blah, blah. I just thought that was nice to kind of hit all the points of, we're going to have some technical glitches, but we're trying to do this as whatever. So anyway, I want to say thank you and a good job for that, the wording on that. So, one thing, I don't know if it's something that if there really wasn't an action item to do, but there was a report in here, I know I don't remember which item it was, but the Township Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund, say that 3 times fast, I noticed that we have a letter dated 2/2/21 where apparently there's some requirement now that they have to provide a report that there were no prohibited transactions in the fund. That's all fine and dandy. It seems all normal. My concern is, why would we receive a report where the person is saying, well, yeah, there were no prohibited transactions from January to December 2019 when we're already in 2021. If there's no prohibited transactions, we should know that about 2020 at this point. So I don't know if maybe that's an oversight or if they normally are ridiculously long in.
I think they took last year's letter and didn't change some dates, so we'll ask them to correct that.
Okay. I guess the only other than my question to the finance committee about I think it was the last meeting, the only other item that I have is just that when it comes to concerns and comments, and now it has escalated to email threats from some residents, I don't take too kindly to that, especially when we're following procedures and decisions are made in open meetings and things go to committee. We're in a township board meeting twice with one committee in between, and, snide comments from people can lead to, accusations. There's a few people sitting in the audience here that were concerned because their roads, the road that they live on is 21 or 22 years since it's been repaved. Now with the change that we did, where we're repaving all the oldest roads first and bringing it up to the year 2000, their road would be repaved. And so to go back to some proposal, and I don't mean any disrespect to you and this proposal and the work that you did putting that together, Rod, so I hope this doesn't come out that way. But to go back to a proposal that had a different methodology of arriving there would then, when we've consistently talked about having roads that are, we're on a 15-year plan, to then have people that, the roads are crumbling, kids can't, carefully rollerblade or, whatever, bike in certain areas because there's like chunks of the pavement that come loose, where I've seen, in an intersection near my house where kids were planting huge chunks of grass in the road where there were holes. That was this last summer. That was a new one. I had stop my car and just go, what on earth is going on? And it stayed there for quite a while because it's a huge hole in the ground. So when the potholes have potholes, when the patching has potholes, that's a problem. So I would encourage people, and maybe this goes into the complaint form kind of scenario, but if people have a concern about a particular decision that's being made, instead of making threats to board members about a decision, why not be part of that conversation from the beginning, and have that dialogue back and forth, and be open to hearing what the other side is, because this isn't something that if we're going to pick on Catherine Henry time, that my tax dollars won't count for anything and I can't get water or sewer or street service or anything like that just because I'm on the board. Then that means everybody that lives near me would suffer from that, and hence the reason why we have several people that are concerned about that kind of thing. So I guess that's really all that I want to say about that point, and I just really have the remaining question about what kind of conversation. I just felt like I don't have a specific question other than the the minutes just say the committee discussed the de minimis and clothing allowance policies and didn't recommend any changes at this time. And considering where we left that conversation in the board, it seemed like there would have been something.
This is one where I think Dan's input would be helpful, because I know at that particular meeting on the Finance Committee, you were able to give us insight into both past practices, costs related thereto, what it cost when we had uniforms and for cleaning uniforms, so on and so forth, versus what we do now, it being a savings. But you had a perspective that I think you could put more succinctly than perhaps any of us.
I'm not trying to put Dan
I
on
know,
the spot.
but it's useful.
Yeah, and Dan and I talked. I'm not trying to, if you want to talk about it, fine. My point isn't to say I need Dan to give all the information and rehash the whole committee meeting on that point. I just was looking for something on that, because if I understood Ryan correctly when I had asked about, hey, how'd that go or whatever, maybe I totally misunderstood Ryan, that he was like, wait, we discussed or we didn't make, or
it wasn't a tremendously long conversation. It was Dan actually did a great job explaining it to us. That's why I would love for you to explain if you'd like, but yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say the basics were, I believe it's $250 is the allotment that they get for uniforms.
I don't want to mention numbers now because I don't have anything in front of me that's prepared, but it started, we used to provide our staff uniforms. We cleaned them. So we paid for the uniforms. We had a cleaning service. They'd bring the uniforms here once a week. And as we removed that, we went to a clothing allowance. And so they purchase clothing up to a certain amount. Well, they can do that through. Our initial idea was they'd buy it on their own, but they realized they could buy it through our vendors less expensive by buying through us. And so they buy through us, and then if they go over, they just pay that difference. And so that's how it worked out for their clothing allowance. So you see that a lot of them watch it really close, and then when it gets toward the end of the year, they buy their clothes at that point because they know exactly what they have left. So you'll see a lot of it at the end of the year for different ones, depending on their habits. Some will do it at the beginning of the year because they can do it again. But that's what it started with. So when you factor in the fact that we had this cleaning company and they were charging increased cost every year and the cost associated with that, then this allowance was a less expensive way to go for us.
And then the other side to it, though, because it wasn't just that, it was I'm assuming that was also the discussion then for the parties or the food items. I forget the wording of. Was that also part of the same discussion?
We discussed both. Yeah, we discussed both whether they wanted to see any changes to the de minimis benefits policy. Yeah, they discussed that. It was all part of the same discussion where we talked about the clothing allowance and we talked about whether we wanted to changes to our annual Christmas party and or the summer gathering. So either one, and they were comfortable with where we're at this point. So there wasn't any changes. So.
Okay, so I just misunderstood whichever one of you said something about not talking about that part of it. I think that was the question that I had. So my bad. That's all. I just wanted to know how the committee went on that.
All right. Anyone else?
The only thing I want to bring up is the election coordinating contract that we are being enticed to sign from the Ottawa County perspective. Again, I wasn't elected during the previous time, during the beginning part of COVID, where we had to take on pretty much all the roles of the May election. I explained it into the election committee, and we all kind of saw eye to eye in it as well. I don't know if Dan, you want to explain kind of the process of like what happened, and I guess I want to have a discussion whether or not we want to sign this. I should have signed it as of January 28th. So it's a little bit behind.
This is where we would do the school board elections on a year that we don't have or at an election where we don't have a township issue on the ballot.
Well, we're responsible
Yeah.
for the general and primary elections and any federal primary. So those elections, additional elections that are school elections only, the county is responsible. And so the county, of course, doesn't want to do it. They prefer that we would do all the work for them. So they propose that agreement where we get reimbursed for our additional costs. It doesn't reimburse us for our full-time staff for their existing costs. So it basically is, if we don't agree to it, the county would be responsible, as it is in state law, to carry out and basically pay the workers and coordinate the elections where it's not one of the general or primary ones for us. So.
Not to say that the election doesn't happen. It's just that the county has to do their statutory duty, and it doesn't fall on our taxpayers.
It doesn't fall on our taxpayers to underwrite the additional costs. Nor do we have to, coordinate 200 extra employees and the cost associated with doing that.
So.
Our recommendation to Ryan was just essentially our opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, Catherine, but our opinion was kind of stick it in a drawer and let's maybe not sign that. But we also said, let's bring this to the board to make sure that you guys are all comfortable with that, because it would be a change from how we've done it previously.
Okay. Because a lot of the issues came up in the May election for this past one. We ended up being on just a communication issue. Hudsonville's clerk did not respond for quite some time. So in this agreement, if it's a Hudsonville-led Hudsonville School District, then the neighboring township would then have to take it over. That's part of the deal. So Hudsonville, in essence, then passed it on. We had to then run it.
For Hudsonville City.
For Hudsonville City.
Could have.
But we ended up having to take all of their voters, and we did it here, didn't we? Correct me if I'm wrong?
Well, that was one of the fears that we faced at the end, because that's one of the conditions in the agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Hudsonville did their own election and handled it. It was just an initial concern. So I don't want it to come out that they didn't do their part. It was a concern that we could end up getting additional voters as opposed to our own voters, all conducted in a place outside of the school district. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to cover those issues. I don't think this is the right forum to discuss some of those particular concerns, but ultimately, it's not our legal responsibility to do so. We learned that it's not also in our best interest to do so, and certainly it's costing us money that, it's hard to imagine a valid reason we would want to make that investment for it, but that's kind of your decision.
And can you refresh my memory, because we have 3 school districts, right?
We have 3 school districts, correct?
So if there is a school district, if any of the 3 have an issue on a ballot, a May ballot or whatever, and there's no other issue, primary or general, that we would be running, we would have to do that for those, whichever school district or school districts of the 3 had a ballot issue.
If we agreed to do it, then we would have to do it. But right now, the county clerk, so for Granville, Kent County Clerk would have to do it, or for Jenison and Hudsonville, Ottawa County Clerk.
As long as we continue to not sign the agreement.
Correct. But they should be notified that we're looking at this direction, so.
I was waiting for this.
Yes, perfect, yeah. I didn't want to suggest the only drawer part, that's what made
Oh, yeah. No, you respond.
For the month.
Yes.
To get to the meeting.
I'll just go on record that I think the public school and how they do elections, collect money, and where the millage money goes is the most convoluted thing I've ever seen in my life. If that had to be redesigned, I'd like to redo that someday. How a school can do an election, we have to collect the money, we have to give it to the state, it comes back to the school. If you don't pay your taxes, your house gets sold by the county. If the township can't collect the taxes, the county sells your house, and the state. It's like makes your head explode just trying to think about who actually came up with that system. There is really nobody in charge. From a businessman standpoint, it's a fiasco. I've never seen, you think the mafia is? It's unreal.
For the record, educators think that the way schools are funded is a mess as well.
It's just getting worse. It's just getting worse, So
I would be okay if we continued to not have Ryan sign it, unless somebody decides they're jumping up and down that they want to see a different change.
I'll go with the recommendation of the Elections Committee.
Excellent. Your course, so
Good, okay. Anyone else? That's Michael.
I would just say, as far as the road list goes, I know there were some complaints about Beretta Court, some streets under there didn't get it. And I would just like to float the idea to think about. I know the board voted to do the sidewalk as an extra once Cottonwood is repaved. That's $450,000. considering the fact that, and I would love to see a full list of every street so we can start looking 5 years out, 10 years out, 15 years out, get a full idea. Because I had even questioned it years past is, are we spending enough? I know we dropped it. We typically spend around $2 million and we had dropped it below $1 million for a few years there. Is $2 million enough? Is $2.5 million enough? Do we need to do $3 million? I think we need to get a grasp on where that list is and be proactive rather than reactive. Because the longer we wait, the more the roads deteriorate, and it can turn from just a resurfacing to a full-on reconstruction, which is really costly. So I would like to float the idea at some point, maybe in the next meeting, or utilities. Would we be better off rather than putting a sidewalk, which would, I mean, sidewalks are great, don't get me wrong, but it's connecting Bauer with Taylor. How many people is that serving when there's the inner neighborhoods can get you to the same place, probably even safer. And also, do the residents who are going to get these free sidewalks know that they're going to have to shovel them every winter, so we're going to have a lot of unhappy
I brought that up, by the way.
Oh, did you?
I did.
And also, today people getting their tax assessments, that improves your home, so your taxes will go out too with that free sidewalk. So would we be better off saying, let's hold off on that sidewalk now, wait till we have goal setting, figure out what walkability, if it makes sense someplace else, take that 450 and allocate that to roads, which did rough calculation. That would take care of those roads there in Beretta Estates or Berger Estates. The ones that came off the list, it would take care of those, and that would only be about 215, so we'd still have a surplus. Wallen Estates, we have 2 courts, 2 small cul-de-sacs in there. Those could get taken care of. Then we have those 2 full neighborhoods taken care of, because they were Wallen and Berger, I believe, last year and the year before we hit some of those roads in there. So that would complete those 2 big neighborhoods, and then still leave leftover money to maybe address a few others.
Just to give you, probably Rod, enough notice.
Well, question I just wanted to bring up, if it's okay, but I want you to know that we've already signed the agreement on those, and so we're incurring costs already for design, so I want to make sure you're well aware of that. The other is I think there would be additional dollars if you wanted to allocate more to roads. But another thing that you could look at is we've had years where the prices come 15% under, and we cannot, because of the schedule to get approval, we cannot bring additional roads back to say, hey, we've got, the price is under. So if you're open to it, we could do prove some type of what I would call alternate list that we could just add to it based on what might be available within the budget we've already done. If you're open to something like that, where we could say, okay, the price came under 100,000, we could do these next roads. Some type of flexibility, but I think you could also do both to answer your other question.
Okay, because I was just under the impression that we were just getting bids at this point. It wasn't, we didn't sign a contract saying we're on board. I thought it was just kind of bids.
We talked about that. We talked about utilities too, that we were hoping that bids would come under and we could look at maybe some cul-de-sacs or hook to roads that we were tarring, finish them up at the same time while the equipment was there, so.
And so to tie in all that, I guess just make sure you have enough notice, because I think you're the guy with the data. I could be wrong, but since we are going to do this goal setting meeting and we have these projects that keep coming up, if we could get the complete list of all of I don't have the complete list of all the roads in the township.
All the roads in the township? Secondary.
The roads that we might potentially be resurfacing, to know all of the dates, and just as we're looking at the bigger picture and not just the year.
Okay.
What's that?
I can get an updated list of that.
That'd be perfect.
I have one that's a couple of years old, but I'll get an updated list from the road commission.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. And even if there's a way to have it marked as to which ones were already approved, for this year, so that as we look at it next year, we already know, or as we look at it with this project, like Dan was saying, okay, well, these ones are essentially accounted for. They're older, but they're going to be done. So then that might help answer that question, I guess. Okay.
Just a ballpark. So we signed the contract. If we were to say, we're going to hold off on the sidewalk for now, are we talking losing 10,000, 20,000, 50?
Well, it would be whatever expense they have associated with it. It
wouldn't be design work at this point.
Yeah. So I don't know how far along they are, but they're designing the entire work to accommodate a sidewalk. So You know what I'm saying? So there's going to be some cost of grading planned all in there. So, you know, utilities are being looked at of where they're at. So everything's, you would have some survey work.
We have some sewer that has to be fixed while they got the road shut down.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's a great one. That's what we did on Cottonwood.
We're extending some water laterals past the sidewalk point.
What's the estimated cost on that? So we're doing sewer and water once it's torn up?
We think it'll be $40,000 to $50,000 of improvement.
Oh, that's not bad.
Well, we're not installing it. We're extending it outside of the road area.
Yeah.
So we don't have to cut it up. It's already there. It's just that
we're repairing some manholes at the same time that are shifted.
I thought it was because when we did the new sewer and water on Cottonwood, that was pretty expensive, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
A few million?
Yeah,
was it $5 million? I'm going from memory. It seems like it's really expensive.
Several million. Yeah.
Okay. I think being proactive like that is fantastic. That saves money in the long run.
Okay. I would say, I agree with you, Michael. I think sidewalks, roads, sewers are the most controversial things we deal with. And if we can make that part of a goal setting, see if we're on the same page on this and come up with plans, that would be awesome. I also, I want to thank Mr. Bosch for making the comments about the fire department. I thought that was just very nice of you to say that. And watching Dan, when he gave his presentation, and we were just so close, to have that tree is going to save us an awful lot of money. It probably will save us money as far as our insurance. So it was nice of you to make that comment.
I should tell you that we intend to make a significant, publication of that information. We are waiting for the written confirmation.
Okay.
So we want the written report in our hands. So that's why we're waiting. We've notified you that they told us, but we just want to, when we publish the information, show the report.
Yeah.
As opposed to, we've been told we've achieved this. So that's a little reason we're kind of not publicizing the data just yet.
Dan, do we send that to insurance companies, or how are they informed?
Insurance companies are well aware will be well aware quickly.
Okay.
There's only a few insurance companies that, I should say, catch the bulk of the people. So the agents will know, they'll all know.
Okay.
Good. All right, anyone else?
Yeah, I said one thing. I hope you've been following the Ottawa County Commissioners at all. But last month or the month before, they approved changing their bylaws and how they report things. And I have a little concern about that. I actually talked to Kyle Turcher, who's one of the commissioners for Georgetown Township. And he voted against it along with the city of Howland. And basically, they've written kind of a confidentiality clause in how they do things, and it just looks to me like the manager, superintendent of the Ottawa County, and the lawyers seem to have been taking the front lead on how to do things in the county, and that concerns me. And as a township who's the largest representation of the Ottawa County, we have two representations, Kyle and then Jim Hofler. I have not had a chance to contact Jim. That's kind of on my list. I just haven't had time to. But I did spend some time with Kyle on there, and Kyle's a little bit discouraged by it. He feels that there's a breach of freedom of speech. And after reading the bylaws, I think I have to agree with him. And so I just want to bring it up to this township board, because we are also representation of the people of the township. And I'm not so sure we may have to address that in the future, just because I think we have a responsibility too. We also are public servants, and I think that they have overreached on how they're doing things there. So, if you want to go online, you can find that new. I was going to print it out tonight, and my printer was not cooperating, and give each a copy of it. And I could even email you guys all a copy just to look at it and see what you think. Just get some thoughts to it. So,
it'd be nice to have Kyle and Jim come in. They used to once in a while, but talking to some of the old timers, I guess our representatives used to come in on a regular basis like that. And I'd like to just see them, talk to them, see what we can do to partner with them a little bit.
I know Jim. I mean, I remember when he was a supervisor here and stuff. So that was kind of my bucket list. Maybe this week we get a chance to give him a call and find out what's going on. I know he voted for it. But I have some reservations on it. I really do. So I'll email you guys a copy when I get just to take a look at it so you know what's coming.
Yeah, please
see what you think.
I'm sure Kyle would be more than willing to come in too. He's a Georgetown Township resident.
He's come before and done quite well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of our representatives, one thing I forgot to mention is that when we had Luke Nerman here, and he had that letter, it took me a very long time to finally read it, but it's now available online, and I don't know if any of you have seen that. I think maybe a couple of you have. I don't know if everybody's
Luke?
seen it.
Yeah, I saw it.
I think you had a resident that might have emailed all of us on the township, but at any rate, if you guys hadn't seen it and I was misremembering that you guys had been gotten an email about it, it's online, and I would encourage everyone who's an official to sign it, even as a precinct delegate or a school board member or on planning commission or anything like that. So it's I don't know what the address is.
OttawaDeclaration.com.
OttawaDeclaration.com, .org, .com.
1,200 signatures.
1,200 signatures?
In 3 days.
Wow.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Support.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.